Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. Kneel. The command wasn't shouted. It was a rumble of thunder trapped in a human chest, vibrating through the rain-soaked floorboards of the pavilion until it settled deep in Lien's bones. Lien didn't move immediately. He stood shivering, his silk robes torn and muddied, the hem heavy with the blood of the guards who had failed to protect him. Rain lashed against the paper screens of the tea house, the only sound in the world besides the terrifying, rhythmic tap of a finger against a hilt. The Alpha sitting before him, General Kalen of the Obsidian Empire, was a shadow carved from violence. He didn't look like a man. He looked like a natural disaster paused in time. I said, kneel, Kalen repeated, his voice dropping an octave, laced with a command pheromone that smelled of burnt cedar and cold steel. Lien's knees hit the wood. It wasn't a choice. It was biology. As an Omega of the fallen Crane clan, his physiology betrayed him before his pride could intervene. He gasped, the air leaving his lungs as the sheer oppressive weight of the general's aura crushed down on him. This was the monster who had starved his city for 6 months. This was the butcher who had promised to burn the Crane clan's library to ash unless a tribute was paid. Lien was the tribute. Look at me, Kalen said. Lien forced his chin up. He expected to see triumph in the enemy's eyes. He expected the lecherous gaze of a conqueror inspecting his spoils. Instead, he found eyes the color of molten gold, burning with an unreadable, ferocious intelligence. So, Kalen murmured, leaning forward, the candlelight catching the jagged scar running from his jaw to his collarbone. This is the jewel of the East, the Omega Prince who was supposed to be hidden away from the world. I am not a jewel, Lien spat, his voice trembling but defiant. I am a hostage. Do with me what you will, but release the grain wagons to my people. That was the bargain. Kalen stood up. He was massive, a towering wall of muscle and black armor. He moved with the silent, predatory grace of a panther. He stopped inches from Lien, his shadow swallowing the smaller man whole. He reached out, his gloved hand gripping Lien's chin, tilting his face to the light. The leather was cold, but the heat radiating from the Alpha was scorching. The grain has already been sent, Kalen said softly. I keep my word, little bird. The question is, will you survive the cage I'm about to put you in? The journey back to the Obsidian capital, heavy with the humid oppression of the approaching summer, took 3 weeks. For Lien, it was a blur of humiliation and terror. He was not shackled in irons, but he was bound by something far stronger, the presence of the Alpha. The carriage they shared was opulent, lined with velvet and gold, but it felt like a prison cell. The air inside was thick with Kalen's scent, a dominant, spicy aroma that made Lien's Omega instinct scream for submission, while his mind screamed for rebellion. You are shaking, Kalen noted one evening as the carriage rumbled over a mountain pass. He was reading a scroll, seemingly indifferent, but Lien had learned that Kalen missed nothing. I am cold, Lien lied. He was burning up. Being this close to a potent Alpha for this long was affecting his cycle. Liar. Kalen didn't look up. You are terrified. You think I'm going to hurt you. You are my enemy? Lien retorted, hugging his arms around his chest. You besieged my home. You killed my cousins on the battlefield of the Grey Plains. Kalen finally looked up. His expression was grim. It was war, Lien. Your cousins died with swords in their hands. They died with honor. I did not torture them. I did not desecrate them. That is more mercy than your father showed my brother. Lien fell silent. The history between the Crane and the Obsidian clans was written in blood. It was a cycle of vengeance that had no beginning and seemed to have no end. Why did you take me? Lien asked, a question that had plagued him since the surrender. You could have demanded gold. Or territory. Kalen set the scroll down. He looked at Lien with a strange intensity, his gaze dropping to the visible pulse fluttering in Lien's neck. Because gold can be spent. Territory can be reconquered. But a bloodline? That is power. You intend to breed me? Lien whispered, the horror of it icy in his stomach. Kalen laughed, a harsh, dry sound. Breed you? No. If I wanted heirs, I have a line of willing noblewomen stretching from here to the coast. I don't need a reluctant Omega from a defeated clan for that. Then what? Protection, Kalen said enigmatically. He leaned back, closing his eyes. Sleep, little bird. You will need your strength for the viper's nest. The obsidian capital was a fortress of black stone and iron, built into the side of a dormant volcano. It was a stark contrast to the elegant pagodas and water gardens of Lien's home. Here everything was hard, sharp, and dangerous. Lien was installed in the west wing of the general's manor. It was luxurious, filled with silk tapestries and imported incense. But the windows were barred, and the guards at the door were elite soldiers who didn't speak. For the first week, Kalen ignored him. Lien was left to his own devices, pacing the room, his anxiety mounting. He began to suspect this was a psychological tactic, isolation to break his spirit. But the solitude was broken not by Kalen, but by a visitor. One morning, the heavy oak doors creaked open. It wasn't the general. It was a man Lien recognized from the war councils of the past, Lord Vane, the emperor's advisor. A beta with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Prince Lien, Vane purred, stepping into the room. Or should I say consort? Lien stiffened. I am a hostage. Nothing more. Vane circled him, inspecting him like livestock. A pity. General Kalen has gone to such lengths to keep you comfortable. The emperor is displeased. He expected your head on a spike, not your body in the general's bed. I am not in his bed, Lien snapped. Not yet, Vane corrected softly. He leaned in close, smelling of cloying rose oil. But Kalen is a man of appetites. And you are a rare delicacy. But be warned, little prince. The general's favor is a death sentence. The emperor does not like his dogs to have pets. Vane dropped a small vial on the table. If you wish to end your suffering, and save your clan from the emperor's future wrath, you will pour this into the general's wine tonight. Do this, and I will ensure your safe passage back to the Cranelands. Lien stared at the vial. Poison. Think on it. Vane whispered, and then he was gone. That night, Kalen came to Lien's chambers for the first time. He looked exhausted. He was still in his armor, the black metal dull with dust. He dismissed the servants and sat at the low table, pouring 2 cups of wine. Lien watched him, his heart hammering against his ribs. The vial was hidden in his sleeve. This was his chance. Kalen was the enemy. Kalen was the monster. If Kalen died, the siege was truly over. Drink, Kalen said, pushing a cup toward him. Lien sat opposite him. He reached for the pitcher to refill Kalen's cup, his fingers brushing the cool glass of the vial in his sleeve. Why do you look at me like that? Kalen asked, his voice rough. Like what? Like you are deciding whether to stab me or weep. Lien froze. Kalen's gold eyes were piercing, stripping away his defenses. Lord Vane visited you today, Kalen said casually, taking a sip of his wine. Lien's breath hitched. How did you? I know everything that happens in this house, Lien. Everything. Kalen set the cup down. Did he give you arsenic? Or was it nightshade? Vane lacks imagination. Lien slowly withdrew his hand from his sleeve. He placed the vial on the table. Kalen looked at it, then back at Lien. You didn't use it. Not yet, Lien said, trying to sound braver than he felt. Why? Because, Lien said, his voice gaining strength. If I kill you, Vane wins. And Vane feels like a snake. You are a wolf. I understand a wolf. I do not understand a snake. Kalen stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. It wasn't the cruel smirk Lien had seen on the battlefield. It was something almost admiring. You are smarter than you look, Lien. Kalen picked up the vial and crushed it in his gloved hand, the glass turning to dust. Vane wants me dead because I am the only thing standing between the Emperor and total tyranny. And he wants you dead because your bloodline carries the ancient claim to the waterways. Lien's eyes widened. The waterways? Is that why you took me? To control the trade routes. No, Kalen said, his voice dropping to a growl. He stood up and walked around the table, looming over Lien. I took you because if I hadn't, Vane would have burned your city to the ground to get to you. I took you to save you. The revelation hit Lien like a physical blow. You are protecting me? I am protecting the balance, Kalen corrected, though his sense spiked with something richer, darker, desire mixed with protectiveness. But do not mistake my mercy for weakness. You are still my captive, and you will play your part. What part? Kalen reached down, his hand brushing Lien's cheek. The touch sent a jolt of electricity through Lien's body that made his toes curl. The part of the lover who tamed the beast. We have to make them believe it, Lien. If the Emperor thinks I am compromised by lust, he will underestimate me. He will think I am distracted. And are you? Lien whispered, his body betraying him, leaning slightly into the touch. Kalen's eyes darkened. I am beginning to be. The charade began. And with it, the lines between reality and performance began to blur. They spent their days together. Kalen insisted Lien accompany him to the training grounds, to the library, even to the strategizing sessions. Lien saw a side of the general that the world never saw. He saw the way Kalen cared for his soldiers, knowing them by name. He saw the burden of command that weighed on his broad shoulders. And Kalen saw Lien. He saw that the fragile Omega was a master tactician who could spot flaws in a supply line within seconds. He saw the steel beneath the silk. The slow burn became an inferno one rainy afternoon in the library. Lien was reaching for a book on the high shelf. His robe slipped, exposing the pale curve of his neck. Kalen, who had been writing at his desk, suddenly was there, pinning Lien against the bookshelf. The impact knocked the breath out of Lien. General, you smell like rain and jasmine, Kalen murmured, burying his face in the crook of Lien's neck. It is driving me mad. Lien trembled. He should push him away. He should fight. But his body was liquefying. His own scent, sweet and inviting, flooded the small space. Kalen, tell me to stop. Kalen groaned against his skin, his teeth grazing the sensitive scent gland. Tell me to stop and I will walk away. I will never touch you again. It was the ultimate test. The powerful warlord giving the powerless hostage total control. Lien's hands found purchase on Kalen's chest, gripping the leather tunic. He could feel the Alpha's heart hammering as fast as his own. If he said stop, Kalen would obey. He knew that now. Kalen was a man of honor wrapped in brutality. Don't, Lien whispered. Kalen froze. Don't stop. Don't. Leave me alone in this house. Lien breathed. Kalen growled, a sound of pure possessiveness, and captured Lien's lips. The kiss was not gentle. It was starving. It was the collision of two enemy nations finding common ground in the heat of passion. Kalen's hands roamed Lien's body, claiming him, mapping him. Lien responded with equal fervor, his nails digging into Kalen's shoulders. For weeks they danced around this fire. Now they burned in it. But the world outside the library was not so kind. 2 days later, the Emperor arrived. The horns blasted, signaling the arrival of the royal procession. The atmosphere in the manor shifted instantly from intimate sanctuary to a fortress under siege. Kalen came to Lien's room, fully armored, his face a mask of stone. He is here, Kalen said. Stay in your room. Do not come out unless I call for you. Is he here to kill you? Lien asked, fear clutching his throat. He is here to test my loyalty. He demands to see the hostage. Let me come with you, Lien said, stepping forward. No. Kalen's voice was sharp. You are safe here. I am not safe anywhere without you. Lien shouted. The admission hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Kalen's expression softened for a fraction of a second. He stepped forward, cupped Lien's face, and kissed him hard. Then pray for me, little bird. He left. Lien paced for an hour. He could hear the muffled sounds of shouting from the great hall. He couldn't stand it. He was not a damsel in a tower. He was a prince of the Crane clan. Lien slipped out of his room. He moved through the shadows of the corridors, avoiding the guards, until he reached the balcony overlooking the great hall. Below, the scene was a tableau of tension. The emperor sat on Kalen's throne, a slight, sickly-looking alpha with eyes full of madness. Vane stood beside him. Kalen stood in the center of the room, surrounded by the emperor's imperial guard. "You defy me, Kalen?" the emperor screeched. "I ordered the execution of the Crane lineage, and yet I hear the Omega lives. I hear he sleeps in your bed." "He is a valuable asset," Kalen said calmly. "He is a distraction," Vane interjected smoothly. "And a weakness. You have gone soft, General. You have let a pretty face make you forget your duty." "My duty is to the Empire," Kalen retorted. "Not to your petty vendettas." "Treason." The emperor stood up. "Guards, seize him. And bring me the Omega's head." The imperial guards drew their swords. Kalen drew his, a massive greatsword that hummed with energy. But it was 12 against 1. Lien didn't think. He acted. He ran from the balcony, bursting through the side doors of the great hall. "Stop!" The room froze. All eyes turned to Lien. He stood there, unarmed, dressed in simple white robes, looking small against the armored giants. "Ah!" the emperor sneered. "The whore!" Kalen's roar shook the walls. He lunged, not at the guards, but to place himself between the emperor and Lien. "Touch him, and I will burn this mountain to the ground." "You would die for him?" Vane laughed. "For a hostage?" "He is not a hostage," Kalen snarled, his eyes glowing so bright they looked like twin suns. The air in the room grew heavy, the pressure of a dominant alpha about to kill. "He is my mate." Silence. Absolute, stunned silence. In the Omegaverse, to claim a mate was a sacred, biological binding. It superseded feudal laws. It superseded kings. To kill a mated pair was to invite a curse from the ancestors. "You mated him?" The emperor looked horrified. "Without my permission?" "I do not need permission to follow my soul," Kalen said, his voice ringing with power. He reached back, his hand finding Lien's. He squeezed it. Lien squeezed back. He stepped up, pressing his back against Kalen's. "And I chose him," Lien announced, his voice clear. "I am not a captive. I am his, and he is mine. If you want to kill him, you must kill me first. And know this, if the Crane clan hears their prince was murdered by the emperor, the rebellion will not stop until your throne is ash." It was a bluff. The Crane clan was broken. But the emperor didn't know that. He saw the fire in Lien's eyes, the same fire that burned in Kalen's. The emperor looked at his guards. They were hesitating. They feared Kalen. And now, they feared the spiritual retribution of harming a bonded pair. "Leave," the emperor spat, his face twisting in defeat. "Take your mongrel and leave my sight. You are stripped of your rank, Kalen. You are exiled to the northern wastes." "Gladly," Kalen said. He didn't lower his sword until the emperor and his retinue had backed out of the hall. Only when the heavy doors slammed shut did Kalen turn. He dropped his sword, the metal clanging on the stone, and pulled Lien into a bone-crushing embrace. "You foolish, brave idiot," Kalen whispered into his hair. "You could have been killed." "I told you," Lien said, burying his face in Kalen's chest, breathing in the scent of cedar, steel, and home. "I understand the wolf. They were exiled, yes. But the northern wastes were not empty. They were wild, free, and untouched by the corruption of the capital." Months later, in a fortress of ice and stone overlooking a frozen sea, Lien stood on the ramparts. He wore furs now, heavy and warm. Kalen came up behind him, wrapping his arms around Lien's waist. He rested his chin on Lien's shoulder. Do you regret it? Kalen asked softly. Losing your title? You're home. Lien leaned back against the solid warmth of his alpha. He looked out at the snow, clean and white. He touched the bite mark on his neck, the permanent scar of their bond, hidden beneath his collar. I lost a cage, Lien said, turning to kiss the scar on Kalen's jaw. And I found a kingdom. Kalen smiled, and for the first time it was a smile of pure peace. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Lien take control of his destiny and his alpha, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments. Would you forgive a captor who became your protector? Or is the line between love and Stockholm Syndrome too thin for you? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then.